welcome to the Millennial Book Junkie. My name is Monique, and in this video, I'm going to share with you all the books that I read in May of 2025. I read 5 books, I read 1 nonfiction and 4 fiction, and let's get into them. The first book I read was Solito by Javier Zamora. This book is about a young little boy. He is about 9 years old in the late 1990s, immigrating to the US from El Salvador. It talks about his journey growing up in El Salvador, what his family was like, and how his family got him to the United States. It was one of the ones that was chosen from my family's book club, and I don't tend to read too many memoirs or nonfiction, but I do like to dabble every once in a while, especially when someone says something's really good. So Javier's parents had immigrated to the US before him when he was younger. He was raised by family, his grandmother, his cousins, his aunts, and he always talks about how his mom would give him gifts from America. He calls it La USA, which is the USA. He talks about how he always dreamed of going to America to be with his parents. He was really enamored with America and American culture and all the things that Americans got to do that he wasn't able to do in his country. And so over the years, he had dreamed of going to America, but he wasn't old enough yet until about 9 years old. It was 1999 at the time. His parents arranged for him to be brought to the United States. And this memoir documents his whole journey from start to finish, from the time when his grandfather took him with a bunch of other people. They had to go on a boat, they had to go on long bus rides, they had to go through a desert, they had the coyotes leading them through the desert multiple times. They got caught by immigration a couple of different times, and this whole journey is like him as a little boy trying to get to America to see his parents. And even though his parents arranged this whole journey for him, it was not easy. I mean, he's a little boy, he's with people he doesn't know, he's not given an opportunity to shower, to eat, he had to pack a bag and keep all his stuff in his backpack, change of clothes, snacks, anything he could. And he's with these people who are basically like all trying to go to the US with him. And he's all alone, he's 9 years old. And he talks about how he, tried to relate to the people that he was with. There was a woman and her young daughter that was there. So he kind of latched onto them because, she was kind of like a mom to him. And the girl was, kind of like a sister. He had a little crush on her, but like he was trying to find and form a family within this group that was traveling with him for so many weeks. I think over a span of like 8 weeks, could have been maybe 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. But it was a long time to be traveling and alone at 9 years old. And this story really hit home for me because my dad and my aunts, they all came from Mexico. And so their journey was not as harrowing as Javier's. They were able to get in, their mom got them in, and they took a bus, and it wasn't as harrowing. They didn't have to go through all the things Javier did. But it kind of hit home for me because I had heard stories about how they came to the US and how grateful they were to be here, my dad and my aunts. So when Javier was talking about his journey to come to the US, it just kind of hit a soft spot for me because, my dad and my aunts and a lot of other people in my family are immigrants. So this book was really good overall. I really, really enjoyed it. And if you enjoy nonfiction stories that have kind of a memoir aspect and ones that talk about their journey immigrating to the US or to other countries, I think you'll really enjoy this. It's also told from the perspective of Javier as a child, and I think that lends to some of the beauty because it really talks about how he viewed the world. You can really kind of see the lens with which he viewed the world as a child and how confusing it was and how scary it was. And I think that really offers some really beautiful insight into what it's like for children who are trying to immigrate to the US. And his story it kind of hit all the feels for me. So I gave it 5 stars. It was a really, really good book. So the next book I read in May was A Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Cesar. This is the book that I talked about in another video. I did a book to movie comparison video. I'll make sure to link that above. And of course, we are back to the thriller and horror genre. I was really excited to start this book, and in the beginning I really enjoyed it. It's about this young girl named Quinn who moves to Kettle Springs with her dad after her mom passes away. They're trying to get a new life, and they are just looking to move on from the sadness of losing her mom. And when they get there, things are a little bit strange because the town is kind of run down. Quinn starts hanging out with the popular kids there, and they kind of have this YouTube channel, and they kind of get up to no good, and the town kind of doesn't like the kids, so Quinn ends up getting invited to a party. Of course, we have a killer clown that's involved, and kids are trying to escape, and it's a lot of fun. I think for me, this book had a lot of elements of like a slasher film. It made me feel like I was reading the book about, I don't know, a Scream movie, you know? And it also gave me, you know, a lot of the good vibes of reading a scary book when I was younger. So I really liked that about it. I think there's something missing from it though. I can't really put my finger on it. I gave it a 3.5. I think it was a fun time, but then I saw the movie and I didn't really like the movie, and then it kind of influenced how I felt about the book, and then I was like, do I want to read another book like this? I don't know, because I really had a good time with it. It was fun, but I don't know if I'm like up for reading the sequels. I don't know, maybe in a little bit. I don't know. So I gave it a 3.5 just because I felt like it was good. It was a little scary, but I don't know. There was something about when I found out the story behind the clown that I was like, you know, so I don't know. I'll let you guys read it and decide. But if you're looking for, you know, a book that is like creepy clown and you want to relive something like, I don't know, your childhood fears of clowns, then definitely pick it up. It is kind of a fun read. Oh my goodness, this next book. Kill for Me, Kill for You by Steve Kavanaugh. This is my very first Steve Kavanaugh, and I loved it. I know a lot of people have read this book and loved it, and I've heard nothing but good things, and they are warranted because this was a very good book. This book follows a woman named Amanda who is seeking vengeance against a man who killed her daughter. Well, she doesn't 100% know he killed her daughter, but she 100% knows he killed her daughter. So she is seeking vengeance on this guy, and she just wants him dead, right? And then we have this other woman who she meets who, you know, she wants someone dead too. Someone killed her daughter. They go out and they're like, hey, you know, why don't you kill for me and I'll kill for you, you know, because that makes sense, right? Separately, we have a woman named Ruth who gets attacked in her home, and she is recovering and she is in trauma, and she thinks the guy that attacked her is everywhere. And we learn in this book how these stories between the two women who are seeking vengeance for their children and this other woman who has been attacked and is traumatized, we kind of learn how those two stories collide, and it is a very fun time. I will tell you, this book really had me on the edge of my seat. I did not ever want to put it down. I absolutely loved it. It had a lot of suspense, a lot of action. There was always something happening, and the twist, oh my gosh, like I kind of, you know, sometimes I'm like, I thought I saw it coming, but then the author kept convincing me like, no, you're wrong. Whatever you think is happening here, you're wrong. And you know what? I was right. I was right, but also very good. And I really like Steve Kavanaugh's writing. It just moves. It's got depth. You know, he gives a background, and you know, I think he has some good like legal expertise. And so everything he was saying just with like cops, and there is a cop in this book that I really like too. Or he's like a detective or something, but I really liked his perspective of things, and I really felt like I knew him, and I just freaking loved this book. I can't say enough about it. Honestly, if you like thrillers, you need to read this one. If you have not read this one, I just freaking loved it. I gave it a 4.5 only because I did kind of guess the twist, and I was a little disappointed that I knew what it would be. But I didn't, there's multiple twists, okay? So you're still in for a treat. Even if you guess one of the twists, you're still in for a treat with this one, because I just loved it, and no one's ever had me like you, Steve Kavanaugh. The next book I read in May was Hex by Thomas Old Hoevelt. This book follows a cursed town, and the town is cursed by a witch. This witch randomly appears to people in the town, in their kitchens, in their bedrooms. Her eyes are sewn shut. Her mouth is sewn shut. She's chained up. She can't move. And she lives in the town. If you try to leave this town, you will have thoughts of suicide and darkness and wanting to kill yourself. So basically, you are stuck in this town with this witch who is walking around and appearing in odd areas, and you can't leave for the rest of your life or you will die. That is the basic premise of Hex. And when I first heard about this book, I was like, oh my gosh, is that not like WandaVision, like horrified, you know, like a terrifying version of WandaVision? And because I loved WandaVision, so I was like, this sounds like a treat. So when I went into this, I really enjoyed the pacing and the writing style. The beginning was really good because it was really cool how the townspeople just kind of saw this witch as just another random appearance, just witches randomly appearing, scary, but the witch would just stand there. Like, it wouldn't try to hurt the residents. It wouldn't try and do anything to them. It just kind of stood there eerily in the corners of their kitchens while they're having dinner. And they were tracking this witch. The whole town was like, okay, we've got this witch. They had a whole service dedicated to tracking this witch. They always knew where the witch was. They had cameras set up all around town, and they had an app where people would be like, oh, she's over here. I forget the witch's name. I think it was Catherine. The witch's name was Catherine. And she, every time she would appear, someone would be like, oh, there's a Catherine sighting, and they would put it in the app. And the app was, you know, run by these people who just basically their whole job was to track her movements and to make sure that nobody opened her eyes and nobody opened her mouth, because they were all going to die if that was the case, because she was like cursed. And so the book offers a background of like where this witch came from and how she came to be. And of course, things happen in this book that, you know, make it so that the witch could potentially have her eyes open and her mouth open, and the kids start messing with her, and things just go to hell. I will say that I did not like this book very much. I will be honest. When I first started it, I was really into it, and I really liked the writing. It was very descriptive writing, and it was kind of like eerie, and the audiobook reminded me of like Stephen King's audiobooks back in the day, and the descriptions were very descriptive, and you just kind of felt like the author really took the time to like do the history of the town and how the town worked, and you know how the witch came to be. But I am not a fan of anything happening to animals, like pet death, anything like that. Trigger warnings. If you cannot deal with anything happening to animals, I would not read this book. That was surprising to me, and that was one of the first turnoffs. And then just this author's like the way that the witch was being portrayed as kind of like this old sex symbol, kind of like by the kids, thinking that this witch was like something that they could mess with in a sexual way, was a big turnoff for me. Also, I was very confused sometimes by what was happening, and also there was parts in this book that were just really extreme in terms of like the torture, and I was like, you know what? I don't think this book is for me. I like things that are scary. The premise of this book was very intriguing, and it had my attention. And for the first like half of the book, I was like, dude, is this like one of the best books? Like, this is really creepy. Like, I was genuinely scared. I almost couldn't read it at night. I mean, I was genuinely scared. And I was seeing this witch in my apartment. You know, I was like, oh my gosh, this thing is freaky. This woman is freaky. But it just took on this like dreadful, devastating, and dark turn. And then things just started to not make sense for me. And I was like, I don't know. Things just got worse and worse. And then at the end, I was like, wait, so what happened? You know, when you read books like that, where you're like, wait, so what happened? And then I was just like, I think this is a little too dark for me. I think it just took a turn about maybe 60% of the way in. And I was like, you know what, this book's not for me. I gave it a 2.5. I think if you're into super scary stuff that incorporates maybe like torture, pet death, body horror, you might be into it. But I just was not. So yeah, I do say though, I really liked the idea for this. And like when I found out what it was about, I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. And I was so excited for it, but I just couldn't get behind it in the end. The final book that I read in May made me so happy, and it was so great to have this great, beautifully written, happy book after the disappointment that was Hex, which left me in a slump. I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I absolutely loved it. This book follows a young woman who gets married at a young age. She is probably in her 20s. Maybe she gets engaged at like 22 or something like that. Maybe it's a little bit later, but she gets engaged and married to her childhood sweetheart. And then the inevitable happens. He apparently dies in a plane crash. And she's like, oh my gosh, you know, what am I gonna do with my life? I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. And then she meets this other guy, and his name is Sam. And this guy is someone that she grew up with. And she starts to love him, and she falls in love. And it's years later after her husband, her initial husband, had died, and she starts to fall in love with this guy named Sam, and everything is great. But then, in true Castaway style, her first husband returns from the dead. He did not die in a helicopter crash. He is back, and now she's like, what do I do? I have these two men here, and I don't know what to do. And it is such a good book. I absolutely loved it. I mean, this is the kind of book where it could have gone wrong. It could have gone south in so many ways, but I just could not put it down. I loved the character, the main character who was going through this, the woman, I forget her name, but I loved her thinking behind everything. And I just loved how she went about trying to decide between these two men that she deeply loved. And the writing style just flowed. Like, I was super interested, even the backstory. And you know me, I am really not a big fan of a lot of backstory, but even the backstory I was obsessed with in this book. And this just lifted my spirits so much. I really, really enjoyed it. And it was sad, but it was heart-wrenching, and you could just feel what she was going through. And it was just kind of like binge watching some sort of series that you can't put down. I remember I was on the treadmill with this book, and I was listening to it, and I didn't even realize that 2 miles had passed, and that never happens. I'm always looking at that treadmill like, when is this gonna be done? And yeah, this book just, I was obsessed with it. I can't explain it. She sucked me in, and then I was just hooked from the first page on to the end, and I absolutely loved it. So I think it was a really solid way to end out the month, the reading month. And it put me in such a good mood after reading Hex, which put me in such a achy mood. I really, really loved One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Oh my goodness. If you're looking for an uplifting but sad but inspirational book to read, you should definitely check that one out. And so those are all the 5 books that I read in May of 2025. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what books you read in May. Which one was your favorite? Have you read any of these books that I've just mentioned? And if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys later. Bye.